Welcome to the deep dive. We unpack complex topics, getting you straight to what really matters.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're diving into something pretty fascinating: the intersection of weather and energy up in the Pacific Northwest. You sent over some really intriguing sources about, well, rain-powered solar panels in Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon, famous for its rain, right?
Exactly. So the big question is, how do you make solar power work effectively when the sun isn't always, cooperating? Our mission today is to explore how these new hybrid technologies are maybe turning that challenge, the rain, into a unique kind of opportunity. We'll look at how these panels actually function, their performance out in the real world, and what the future might hold.
What's really interesting here, I think, is the sheer ingenuity. Developing systems that generate electricity in all sorts of weather conditions, not just sunshine. It's really about making every single drop count, so to speak.
Absolutely. So the first big innovation the research talks about are these things called triboelectric nanogenerators,
What have you done?
TNGs for short.
Thanks, Ans.
And this is where it gets really cool. They harness energy from mechanical friction. Think raindrops sliding down or hitting a surface.
It's a bit like, the static electricity you get rubbing a balloon on your hair.
Okay.
Yeah, researchers like those at Soochow University have actually integrated these special polymer layers. There's a textured top layer and a conductive bottom layer right onto traditional solar cells. So when a raindrop hits that top layer, it creates a tiny static charge.
Which is then captured.
Exactly. Captured as electricity.
And the really clever part, according to the sources, is that these tang layers are transparent.
Right, which is key.
So on clear days, they don't really block the sunlight much. They maintain something like 85 to 90% of the solar cell's original power output.
Which is pretty good. Early prototypes are, well, they're small. They mainly yield enough power for low-power sensors right now.
Okay, so proof of concept stage, really.
Precisely.
Uh-huh.
Proving the core idea works.
Mm-hmm.
But, and this is important, the current energy yield from these tang eggs is quite low. We're talking nanoamps.
Tiny.
Very tiny. So scalability, getting this to power, say, your house, that's still a pretty significant hurdle we need to overcome.
Okay, so beyond friction, the sources also mention piezoelectric enhancements. How do those fit in?
Ah, right. Piezoelectrics work a bit differently. They convert the actual force or stress of the raindrop impact into electrical energy.
So less about sliding friction, more about the thump.
Exactly. Imagine a tiny, tiny hammer hitting a special surface and generating a little spark of energy.
Got it.
And the sources show these can potentially yield a bit more power in simulated heavy rain anyway, directly adding to whatever the solar part is generating.
And then there was mention of graphene, too.
Yes, and sort of connecting this to the bigger picture, even more advanced stuff like graphene-based hybrid cells are being looked at. They work differently again, generating energy from ions within the raindrops themselves.
Okay, but isn't Oregon's rain pretty pure, low salt content?
That's the challenge, exactly. Oregon's rain often has very low salinity, which makes this specific graphene method less effective there. Researchers are proposing solutions, like maybe incorporating tiny salt reservoirs into the panels, but that adds complexity, of course.
So, bringing this back to Oregon specifically, what does all this tech mean for actual performance there? The research had a kind of paradox, right?
It did. Cooler temperatures, like you often get in Oregon, even in winter, actually improve the efficiency of standard solar PV panels.
Really?
Yeah, panels in Portland, for example, can generate maybe 5 to 10% more power per installed watt during the cooler winter months than in the peak of summer. Heat actually reduces efficiency slightly.
Huh, didn't realize that.
And the rain itself.
Yeah.
It plays a dual role. Beyond any potential energy harvesting from tangs or piezoelectrics, it naturally cleans dust and grime off the panels.
Ah, like a free car wash.
Pretty much, boosting efficiency by maybe 3–5% right after a good storm. Plus, you have Oregon's net metering programs.
Right, those are important. They let you essentially bank the extra energy you generate in the sunny summer.
And draw on that credit during the cloudier, rainier months. It helps smooth out that seasonal difference in generation.
Okay, so this starts to paint a picture of practical applications. The sources mentioned smart irrigation.
Yes, think about agriculture. These hybrid panels could potentially allow farmers to fine-tune their watering schedules. You'd prioritize solar power when it's sunny, but maybe switch to rain-harvested power to run the system controls during a storm, saving the solar energy stored in batteries.
And there was a project mentioned.
Yeah, one source mentioned a project reporting something like 3-month autonomous operation for growing tomatoes using a system like this.
Interesting. What about cities? urban infrastructure?
Well, maybe hybrid panels could power things like wireless EV charging stations, especially useful in more rural spots where grid access is patchy. There was a prototype mentioned, I think 256 watts, that achieved pretty decent efficiency, over 90% just charging e-bikes. And you could imagine maybe triboelectric layers on streetlights or bus shelters, providing some localized power. Though, again,
The yield is still low.
exactly, current energy yields are still pretty small for anything high demand like charging a full electric car quickly.
Okay, so it sounds promising, but clearly there are challenges. What are the main ones holding this back right now?
Well, upfront cost is definitely a big one. These hybrid panels are estimated to be maybe 20–30% more expensive than standard PV systems.
That's significant.
It is, although federal tax credits and potentially state ones in Oregon can help offset a good chunk of that, maybe 26–30%.
Yeah.
Energy storage is also absolutely critical. Solar and rain power are intermittent, right? You need
And
batteries.
good batteries are expensive.
Very. Solutions like large-scale flow batteries, which store energy in liquids, are still generally too costly for your average home installation. And then there are environmental things to think about. If you pair this with something like pumped storage hydropower, that has its own impacts. And some mention acidic rain potentially degrading certain materials like those graphene cells over time.
Right. So given those hurdles, where do we go from here? What's next for rain-powered solar?
A lot of it points towards material science. Real innovation there. Researchers are working on enhancing that tank efficiency, maybe boosting it by 40, even 60%, using new nanostructured polymers, or maybe looking at bio-inspired designs, learning from how nature handles water and energy.
Fascinating. And policy must play a role too.
Absolutely. Oregon's renewable portfolio standard, that mandate for 100% clean energy by 2040, that creates a real incentive. It opens the door for state-funded pilot programs, maybe testing how these hybrid systems integrate with microgrids.
Microgrids,
Yeah,
like self-sufficient local energy systems.
exactly. Could be really useful for boosting storm resilience in communities, keeping the lights on locally even if the main grid has issues.
So wrapping this up, rain-powered solar panels seem like a genuinely promising, if still early-stage, frontier for Oregon's renewable energy mix.
Yeah, while the prototypes we have now aren't quite ready to, power your entire life 24/7 just yet, the advancements are happening. They could eventually unlock round-the-clock energy generation that's really tailored specifically to Oregon's climate.
For now, though, it seems strategic investments in better, cheaper storage and smart policy support are going to be absolutely key to getting this technology to scale. It definitely leaves us with an interesting thought to chew on. How might our whole understanding of solar energy start to shift, as we learn to harness every bit of weather, not just the sunshine?
Hmm.
And what could that ultimately mean for how we meet our future power needs?